My name is Teresa Palomo Acosta. I was born in McGregor, Texas, and I have lived in Austin for many, many years. I studied here and got my undergraduate degree at the University of Texas at Austin, and then did graduate work in journalism at Columbia University in New York. I took a lot of what my mother did, assisting the family and being basically mother and father to the family, for granted for a long time. Only when I was an adult did I realize that she had done so much, and that really this is a part of women's history that has really been ignored, because we tend to think that history is the grand things that men are doing. And history really is a coverage of all human experiences over a period of time. And women have always contributed to that economy. And you find it in every era, in every group. No one has had, it affects everyone. So I think that I learned as I was doing my own work in women's history how significant domestic work is to the telling of the story of Texas. I've spent most of my life doing research and writing, and quite a bit of that's been devoted to historical research, specifically on the experiences of Mexican American individuals in Texas. And it's been a trajectory from the time I first started. I was not trained officially in history. I was trained in Mexican American studies and then in journalism. But what I have found is over the course of the last 20 years that we went from being people who were in footnotes in a chapter in a book to being the chapter of an essay, and then to being an actual book. And for me, it's been a very important, extraordinary journey, because it's allowed me to visit what it means to create history and to tell stories of people whose stories we don't know. Ruthe used to always say that you always had to tell that larger story of people who otherwise wouldn't be represented. Otherwise, you would rob what their inheritance was. Whenever I have been faced with a project, a research project, or just a decision that has to be made that's on public policy that will affect, education, will affect funding for arts and the like, and I really become discouraged and think, oh my gosh, here we go again, we have to go fight this again. I think of those women that I have studied who were facing in some ways even more dire situations, who didn't have any money to go engage in any fight and yet went forward. In the 1930s, probably the largest labor activity that has occurred, or that did occur in the 20th century, was put together by a group of women headed by Emma Tenayuca. All these women were pecan shellers. At one time in this state, our pecan shelling industry was one in which women sat at little tables in terrible conditions, and they shelled pecans. If you've ever shelled pecans, you know how tough that is on your fingers and the like. Well, the pecan shellers decided that they should earn more money, and so they went out on strike, and they fought for their rights. So when I think of my own difficulties, I think of the kind of conditions under which they labored, and their willingness to lose their jobs, to have really nothing in order to gain something greater. One of the things that's really significant in our doing women's history, in Texas in particular, is our willingness to really look at the differences that women have had in the state. We are not all one homogeneous group. We've had our differences. Some women have been more oppressed than other women. Some women have had more power and the like. And I think when we look at history, we should look at it really honestly, so we can look at what everyone's experiences were. At the same time, we can be supportive of all of us being able to say our piece. I think that there's wonderful things that can be gained from learning to debate openly women's different stories and how they all touch one another in many significant ways. it's not a good idea to sugarcoat anything you do in history. And so sometimes we are made uncomfortable by realizing all the differences that we've had, but at the same time that enriches the story. It's very powerful to be able to look at all these variations and to see how women have been different from one another, and racially, ethnically, socioeconomically, and at the same time how different laws have impacted women pretty much in the same way.